Okay, looks like we're live. Martin, it's been a long time, my friend.
Yes, it's great to be back, Zach, and I've been looking forward to this conversation since we've set it up.
Well, since the last time we've spoke, I think a lot's happened, right? Your book officially got released.
It's now published. It's available on Amazon in softcover. If you've got Kindle, it's available for 99 cents. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's for free. So, yes, it's out there and we're selling it. And I'm just so happy and grateful for the support we've received from many people with this book.
Well, the outdoor community, by and large, is pretty supportive, so that's a great thing. I'm jealous. I've always wanted to write a book. I don't know that I'm, uh, I guess, interesting enough to have a book, but what was the process for you? I know the last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about your wife convincing you to get out of the Boy Scouts and free up some time to do the things you really love. Where did the book kind of fall into that?
Well, part of the process for getting recognized by the Green Mountain Club for being an end-to-ender on the long trail is you submit a journal. Now, I've been told that's changed, that you can do an online, you could do a virtual journal where you could send in pictures on Instagram. But at the time, I had to actually submit a journal. And my wife went through it and proofread it. And after doing so, she said, this could be the foundation for a book. Because and then keep in mind, she had heard all the stories. She knew all the what happened in between the lines. The journal pretty much is, well, I hiked from point A to point B and did this and that, but she knew the stories of the people I had met, the interesting people and the hitchhiking stories and the town stories. And she read the trail journal and said, "No, this is the foundation for a book. You really need to now," and as she put it, fill in the lines here, fill in the gaps here, and turn this into a book.
So whenever you started off hiking the long trail, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
you knew going in that you had to keep a journal. Like that's a set of criteria to
Yes.
get into that club.
Yes. And I didn't sit there taking notes the whole time. When I hike, I pretty much don't journal while I'm hiking. I know a lot of people do. I get into my tent at night and I either read a book or listen to some music. But what I started doing is just jotting down little notes as I went along, because there'd be certain times where maybe I have an interesting situation or I meet somebody that was particularly interesting, and I just wanted to make a little note of it.
Hmm.
I just thought, wow, some of this is becoming the material that I really want, not necessarily for writing a book, but I really like to be able to remember these times.
And filling in those blanks and the kind of in between the line stuff, was that where you sat back and kind of had that introspective look on the experience? Because I noticed, like, we'll talk some specific examples of things that I looked at, but like you'll see something, and then right after describing the event, you'll talk about kind of what it made you think. Is that what you did? You just kind of read those events and thought, "Oh man, what was I thinking at that time?"
Yeah, going back and writing it, it was, I felt like I was given an opportunity, first of all, to relive the experience, sitting there, going through my trail journal, and then putting the pieces together. And then I would have moments where I would sit back and, yeah, what was I thinking? Or looking at the bigger picture of what actually happened. Writing the book, going through that process, it really did allow me to sit back a little bit and maybe even gain a larger perspective, look at the bigger picture more so than when I had just finished up and went home and went about my normal life, so to speak.
I would say that little bit of separation would have to be healthy for the writing process. Even right after you do something, everything's still too raw and fresh in your mind. It really takes that time away from it to appreciate it.
Yeah, there's the combination of healing from the bumps and bruises or maybe a little blister here or there, and then there's the whole excitement of that you've finished this and, yeah, taking some time in between. As I recently was talking to somebody about this, that, we get bumped up, we get our blisters, but we forget about those so fast after we have some time away from the trail and we're able to reflect on the experience.
I've heard it explained as like type 1 fun and type 2 fun. Like the type 1's roller coaster. It's fun in the moment, but like no one really remembers, oh man, you remember that best day of roller coaster riding we ever had? And then type 2 is, God, that sucked in the moment. It was awful. Why did we do this? And then months later, you're going, man, did you remember how all that hiking we did? That was great. We were miserable, but it was fun.
When I was a scout leader, Zach, when we'd have those situations with the kids, I'd always remind them, this is what you're going to remember. Those perfect days when it's 72 degrees and sunshine and no rain and everything's dry. Yeah, that's kind of the expected. What you're going to remember is that camping trip where it rained like heck for 3 days and how much fun you had and what you did to keep yourself entertained and get through it. Those are the things you're going to remember.
Absolutely. So going back, filling in all the blanks, what is the proofreading, editing, publishing side of writing a book? Because I don't really know that whole side of it. I don't think a lot of people really understand how much work goes into writing a book.
Well, a lot of the effort was keeping myself motivated. There were times I'd write something, read it, and say, "Oh, that's just garbage. It sounds horrible." My wife keeping me motivated by saying, "Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine." Uh, we initially thought I would write it, she'd proofread it, and we'd publish it. But it didn't take long for us to realize that because she was so close to the situation, we really needed a third party. And that's when we made the decision to hire an editor to go through the book and give that more objective opinion, that person who can look at the book and ask the questions. And, for example, there were things I had written that my wife and I understood, but when a third party read it, my editor, he'd say, "I don't quite understand that. Can you elaborate a little bit?" So when I reached that point where I brought in an editor, I think that's really where it really started to speed up for me.
Hmm.
Um, Started out a little bit frustrating. My editor was great, very kind to me, reminded me of one of my high school English teachers.
Uh-huh.
But I also couldn't help but say to myself, can I really do this? I've got to make this many corrections. And what I'd say to anybody, and yourself included, Zach, if you're going to write, just write. Just do it. Nobody can do it perfect. And find an editor to help you get through that process, because the truth is when you finish it, you're satisfied. And if you're writing about an experience you lived, whether it's backpacking or anything in your life, that writing process gives you the opportunity to relive it. But provided it's a happy experience you're writing about. And if it's not, maybe it gives you the opportunity to help you get through something. But yeah, I got to say that, I'm not going to lie. There were times it was very frustrating. There
Hmm.
were a few times I really wanted to just quit and say, all right, there's other things I could be doing with my time. But when I completed it, it was very satisfying.
Did you find your writing was more productive whenever you were, let's say, in a room by yourself, you set like time aside to specifically write, or was it a spontaneous thing that like you had an idea, like I have to write this down right now or I'll forget?
Uh, Totally spontaneous. When I tried to do this whole, I'm going to schedule from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock to write, didn't work. It's not like I was able just to, and I don't know if it's like this for everybody. The way my brain works is I just can't flip a switch and start working.
Hmm.
Most of my writing was like at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if I could, I would get the idea in my head and I would just say, okay, I'm going to get up, go to my computer and start writing.
Yeah.
Before I forget this, I might wake up in the morning and get distracted or not get around to it.
I'm a little surprised you didn't enlist the help of Dubetube to kind of help you relax a little bit and write.
I'm sure he would oblige. I'm sure he would have assisted me if need be. Um, you know, he, I, I've got to give him some credit. He provided me with some adult beverages that I did indulge in at times while I was going through the writing process.
Reading the book, it was really fun to see how you kind of laid things out. You didn't linger and waste a lot of time on things, but the things that you threw in there, the whole doob tube thing, that was hilarious. I never would have seen that coming ever. Is your son really that way? I mean,
Yes. If you knew my family, my kids would say first thing they'd say is, "You know what? There was no such thing as being afraid to say anything to my parents." Yes, they would get in trouble for things. Certainly when he was younger, I would have handled it differently, but he was,
A
he's
grown
he's an
man.
adult. He's an adult. What am I gonna do? You're punished. Go to your room. What really? Uh, and here, Zach, here's the thing. I almost left that story out of the book. Uh, and everybody tells me that's so funny. Did that really happen? And the reason why I almost left it out is I said, is it safe to have drug references in there? And it was my editor that said, you know what? I live in Colorado. This was his words. I live in Colorado. Marijuana is legal here. And he laughed
Right.
and he goes, it's hilarious. That needs to be in the book. It needs to stay in the book.
Well, and I think I don't want to speak for all the through hikers and the long distance hikers, but there almost seems to be a much more accepting culture around things like that. You wrote a couple of stories about meeting people out on the trail. Higgins is one that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about him later because he seems like a really cool dude.
Yeah.
Uh, but stuff, I mean, recreational marijuana use doesn't seem like it's really that big of a deal.
What I saw out on the trail is that people who were smoking marijuana or cigarettes, whatever they whatever vices they partook in, they would do it in a way where it was respectful to the other hikers. And, it wasn't as if well, I do this, so what if you don't? What I observed was a very a mutual respect among everybody. I'm not going to judge the person who does that, and the person who's doing that isn't going to do it right in your face.
Hmm.
There's a mutual respect out there in the trail, and you said it early on. The people in the hiking and backpacking community, there's such a support there and an understanding of being non-judgmental. I think that plays a part of it. Or speaks to it.
That culture is amplified in the guys that do the through hiking and the long distance hiking. I feel like that's a whole different animal of outdoor recreational activity. It takes a special person to hike from Georgia to Maine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've been asked if I ever would. I'm very honest. I don't think I could. I'm not going to say I never would, but right now, I don't know if I'd have it in me to be away that long, spend that much time on the trail,
Hmm.
be away from my wife and my friends and my children that long. Uh, but I'm not going to say I never would or that I absolutely can't.
You know, reversing gears a little bit. You start off your book talking about your dad and your brother being your hiking partners growing up. Uh, how do you think they would feel about the hiking culture? These through hikers today.
Well, my father wouldn't be too happy about the idea of smoking marijuana, but my father also had a way of seeing people as just, hey, they are who they are. And
Hmm.
as long as they're not hurting anyone, as long as they're not forcing their ideas on me, holding a gun to my head, so to speak, to partake in whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
go ahead. Just, you know, actually, I think yeah, if he had seen it the way I did, if he'd experienced it the way I did, he wouldn't approve of people doing it, but I know that he wouldn't have gotten preachy or said anything to anyone. He would have probably just kept his mouth shut and said, "Well, that's their business. They're a really nice person. I'm not going to judge them.
Yeah.
That's what they do."
It's good. That's excellent that got passed on to you too, because you're out on the trail, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're not hurting anybody. Just
Yeah,
go on your way and be done with it.
yeah. And you ask about my older brother. Well, him and we'd probably fall in the same category. It'd be a bit hypocritical of us to pass any judgment.
So uh the whole story of you like proposing the idea of hiking a section of the long trail to your wife, wh- did you have to build yourself up psychologically to ask her that?
Oh yeah. Uh, I knew it was a bit of a sacrifice every year, the idea of me going to scout camp every year. And for years, that was an easy sell because my kids were going to scout camp. But then we reached a point where my youngest had aged out, and I could see it was becoming a little bit more difficult for me to convince her. And it
Hmm.
was something I enjoyed doing. So when that conversation took place, yeah, I threw it out there. Well, if you're feeling so open about me doing multi-week hikes and living my backpacking dream, how about the Appalachian Trail? And my biggest fear was she'd say, "Okay, yeah, go ahead, do it next year." But she said, "Is there anything you can do that's not quite like 4 to 6 months? Something that maybe is like 2 to 3 weeks?" And that's when I said, "Oh, actually, there's a trail up in Vermont I can do."
And I can really appreciate the way that you took your book. The even the title, changing gears, right? For someone that loves the outdoors and loves hiking, the idea of taking 5 to 6 months off, hiking this, you know, world class trail, famous across the United States, that would be hard to say no to. Like if you had the option, it sounds like if you would have pressed the issue, she probably would have let you.
Yeah, I probably could have, and I'm not kidding when there was a part of me that was a little nervous. You might just say, "Go ahead."
But the way you approach it in your book, it's that meaning of setting your mindset to not think of yourself as a failure. I think you mentioned that in your book. Like, so what if I don't complete this whole section of the trail? That doesn't mean I failed. It just means that it didn't get done this time.
Yeah, Zach, that was maybe the biggest takeaway from my whole experience. And when I made that decision to put pen to paper with this book, my biggest motivation was, there are a lot of people out there that don't finish these trails, and that shouldn't be seen as a failure. The biggest failure, I hate to sound cliche-ish, but the biggest failure is failure to try, right? Failure to start. I hear stories of people who go out on the Appalachian Trail, hike it for a couple of weeks, and they feel awful that they had to get off. They let people down. If you went out there for 2 or 3 weeks, you did more than most of the public has done. You've hiked more of that trail than most people will ever do.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't even know the Appalachian Trail went from Georgia to Maine. We visited the Smokies, heck, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was. And we were on a section of it. I didn't even know it. And we passed this couple of women and they, "Are you guys going to Georgia or Maine?" And I went, "I don't know." And I got back to the hotel room and looked it up and I thought, well, crap, it does go from Georgia to Maine. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've hiked in addition to the long trail, I've hiked sections of the AT from like now I'm like Lehigh Gap up to the New Hampshire border. So I go out and I've done 2 or 3 week hikes on the AT. And I'm usually with the bubble, and it's kind of funny because you'll come across through hikers. "So, you northbound or southbounding?" And it's, "Well, I'm just section hiking."
Do you do you think people look at section hikers different than through hikers? I mean, is it not the same accomplishment?
No, I don't think so. We go back to the culture of the hiking community in general, and I think that through hikers realize that the through hike means a lot to them, and it's what they set out to do. But I
Hmm.
think they also understand that through hiking is not for everybody. Section hiking is sometimes the only way people can hike the trail.
Right. I could see that. I mean, that it takes a special set of circumstances to be able to commit that amount of time. Like, I just had someone on the podcast that's doing the PCT, and it's going to take them between 6 and 7 months. They're going to be out there, and they're not working. They don't have kids, but they're going to take the time to do it. They got their permits printed. They're on the way.
Yeah, and it is a big commitment, and most people aren't in that situation. You see situations where husband and wife will go out and do it together, or single people will do it. But there's a lot of people out there who are married whose spouses don't hike, and that adds another dimension to, can I is it possible for me to through hike? And those, I know in my case, I can speak to myself, that is a big part of what would go into my decision. If my wife were to say, "Hey, go ahead and do it," that would be a big part of it. Is she okay with it? And would I be okay being away from her that long?
And throughout the whole book, I've got to give you credit. You give credit where credit's due. I mean, you make it very clear that she is 100% on board with whatever you think you can do. even to the point where she's, booking you a hotel room on your last night of the trail.
Yeah, I would have never thought of doing this without her blessing or support, or I would not have been able to do it without her support. I wouldn't want to do it without her being behind me and her support. Yeah, it meant the world to me. My biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan, my biggest support was her. I say in the book that when I decided in 2017, I went out there saying, I'm just going to hike till I'm finished hiking. Well, I called her up. I'm done. And she said, oh, okay. Are you sure? Yep. And she booked me the hotel room.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
uh, okay, we've got to talk about a couple of the characters that you've met on the trail. I don't want to give away everything in the book because it's definitely worth reading. Uh, but the first guy that really jumped out to me was Higgins.
Yes.
He was an interesting guy.
Oh my. In so many ways. Um, I probably could have written so much more about Higgins. And I, you know, and I mean this in the most endearing way. He just had a personality that just he was, there was no guessing with him. He said what was on his mind to
Mhm.
the point where sometimes it might startle people or upset some people, but they couldn't disagree with him. Uh, and when they used the term marches to the beat of his own drum, he's the poster child to marching to the beat of your own drum.
He almost came off as this gruff, grouchy old guy,
Yeah.
but the longer you hiked with him, the more his character kind of grew on me. I thought I could hang with this guy. He would be fun to just spend time with out in the woods.
Yeah. And I wish I could have hiked more with him, to be honest with you, because when you do long distance hiking, generally you'll break camp and okay, I'll see you at some point during the day. And maybe when you're filling up your water bottle or you're eating for lunch, you'll stop and talk a little bit. And it's like, okay, you're going to Stratton Pond. Okay, I'll see you at the Stratton Pond shelter. And at the end of the day, you see each other and maybe you hang out in town a little bit. And you're right, as time goes on, uh, it's like anything in life, you start to develop a friendship, you start to find out what you have in common.
Hmm. How long does that take out on the trail? Because you just run across some random hiker. Does it is it immediate that you're like, okay, I could talk to this person for a while, or does it take a few encounters before you really hit your stride with them?
What I've seen, and this goes with observing what happens in the AT bubble and talking to other hikers and my own experience, I think it's like going to school, right? You find your group and you kind of gravitate to them. Like, Higgins wasn't much older than I was, and we started talking and turned out we had similar musical interest. So before you know it, it's like, oh, okay, well, you have this interest. And then we had a couple of other people who would overhear the conversation. And
Hmm.
before long, you've got this small group of people now that are friends, right? They use the term family, right? Or tramley is the
Yeah.
term you'll sometimes hear. And then you'll see this other little group. Maybe they're all the same age and have similar interests. They're all kind of moving along together. Um,
What was his disdain for trail names? What did he ever explain that?
no, he never did. Uh, I was almost afraid to ask him, but when I was booking our stay at the Green Mountain Hostel, and I asked him, that's when I wish I could have maybe made a video documentary of this. The look on his face, the look he shot me. You know, uh,
Oh man. Okay, so you guys kind of split ways. Did you ever contact him or see him again or anything after your little section hike there?
we had left a few messages, texted a couple of times, and then I got a he's not available. This number's no longer in service.
Yeah.
And I can only guess, but in the short time I spent with him, he may have come to a point where he said, okay, it's time for me to turn the page and move on to the next thing I'm going to do. And,
Hmm.
maybe that's finding a place to spend the winter or just finding new people to talk to. I don't know.
Possible. The other thing that was very interesting to me is it just a northeastern thing, or an Appalachian Trail thing, but the hitchhiking. Like you guys hitchhiked a lot.
Oh, Yeah. Oh, it's hitchhiking is pretty big on the AT. The only states it's not allowed in is New Jersey and New York, but every other state it is. And I look, I'm not a kid, uh, but I just love hitchhiking, and
Really?
it's because maybe it's because I'm a sociable person. I love just talking to people and hearing their stories, and even though they're just brief encounters, I find the people so interesting.
And it seems like from what you put in the book anyway, a lot of those people were up there because they had through hikers that they were maybe going to like coordinate a visit with, or they were dropping somebody off anyway.
Yeah, there were a few occasions, one in particular going into Manchester Center where we didn't even start hitchhiking at that point. I was with Higgins and we had just walked a little bit down the trail and somebody pulled up in a silver Subaru. Said, "Hey, you guys look like you can use a ride." We got in and he says, "Oh yeah, my son is hiking this section of the trail. My wife and I have come out here just to go through Vermont. We're from Ohio, and we just wanted to visit Vermont, and that was kind of cool. But that wasn't the only time, but that was maybe the most memorable one.
Yeah, maybe it's just where I grew up and the people I grew up with. But if I would have told, let's say, my grandparents that I was just walking down the road and hitchhiking from place to place, they would have lost their minds.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, right outside New York City, and you asked about my father earlier.
Uh-huh.
I think if he were alive, even at this age, he'd be saying, "What the heck is wrong with you?"
I could hear my grandpa right now. I can't believe you do that. Someone's going to murder you and throw you in
Right.
a ditch somewhere.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a
There's a good reason why hitchhiking's illegal in New York and New Jersey, and my father would have been sure to remind me of that, of all the dangers that could have happened to me while hitchhiking.
but it doesn't seem like the through hikers really have that fear. I mean,
No,
they're doing what they do.
but there's dangerous people everywhere in life, and like I don't want to come across as advocating that we should all go out and start hitchhiking. I mean, heck, it would take my hitchhiking opportunities away. I don't want to do that, but yeah, uh, there are so many things you could be afraid of out there. There's so many other places you can be where you're going to meet dangerous people. Here's what I have not just experienced, but have heard from other hikers is that the people that live around those trails, they're used to it. It's part of the culture. It's part of living in those areas to see hikers and to think, okay, these are just I see it. They have a backpack. They're heading towards town or they're heading towards a trail. Let me give them a ride.
And about halfway through the book, that's where I'm at right now. I haven't finished it yet. I'm
Mhm.
working on it. Um, you talk about the like the fear versus the obsession of the long trail. You talk about like you didn't know whether you were afraid to hike it or you were afraid you weren't going to get to finish it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that something like was it really that strong of a feeling, I guess? Were you really afraid you weren't going to get to do it?
I had a habit when I was younger, more in my 20s than in any other time, where I would start things and give up. If I didn't think I was going to be successful at it or I could finish, I would just walk away from it. And I did have a fear that if I got out there for 2 days and didn't like it, I'd quit. And maybe that's what the fear of the trail was that I'd go, I would maybe experience some unpleasant feelings of the past of, oh, just one more thing I didn't finish.
Hmm. That's that's interesting, especially since hiking is just one of those things where you don't really win or lose. There's no
No.
like hiking winner. You're just hiking.
And that's what inspired the title, Switching Gears, is because it also was a time where not just the fear of not finishing, but I the way I got over my fear of not finishing things is I became obsessed with goals. Okay. I have to
Mhm.
complete this. I have to finish this goal. And if I don't finish this goal, I'm a failure. Well, I
Yeah.
taught myself while I was hiking after I'd hurt my knee and went back that no, I'm not a failure if I don't finish. And I'm a failure if I don't go out and try. As I said in the beginning about AT hikers, I'm a failure if I don't get out and try. Um, but if I finished, hey, the truth is, it's most important to me. It means more than anything to me.
Right.
My friends are happy for me. My family members are happy, but they're happy because I did something that was enjoyable for me. Otherwise, what did it really mean?
Yeah, if you try to do something for somebody else, it's definitely not as pleasurable. It doesn't mean it nearly as much.
And a quick story, not related to the book directly. In 2019, I was section hiking the AT. I was in Connecticut. I just crossed from the New York border into Connecticut and came across a young lady. She was 18 years old and she was with her boyfriend. And they walked into camp and she just complained the entire time about, oh, I'm tired. My feet hurt. I got a blister. I've got this. I'm tired of being dirty. Then her boyfriend comes over and sits down with us while she goes over and uses the privy. And he says, this is bankrupting me. Every time we get to a road, she wants to go into town. And I'm spending so much money on hotels, bed and breakfast, hostels. I just don't know. So then she comes back and she's talking some more. And I asked her, I said, so you don't sound like you're having a lot of fun out here. What's motivating you to keep going? Well, I talked to my family last week and they said, I have to finish this. I started it. I really have to finish it.
No.
And I did something that I think was maybe a good thing. I said to her, well, who are you doing this for? Is this for you? Well, if you've stopped having fun, then maybe it's time you consider going home. The trail's not going anywhere. You've made it to Connecticut. You've made it further than any of your family members will. I asked her, have any of your family members ever hiked even a mile on the AT? No. I said, well, then go home. And if you want to come back next year, heck, you're already in Connecticut. You can start here and finish up. The next day, her boyfriend comes over to me and he says, I want to thank you. At the next road crossing, we're getting off and going home.
Papa Bear therapy.
Yes. So, yeah, if you want to get talked out of finishing your hike, come talk to me.
Oh, shoot. So up to this point, that's about all the book notes that I wanted to talk about. Related to the book, though, I do want to kind of go over maybe like a gear list, how you prepared, and how you overcame some of your anxieties about it, maybe for other people that are considering it. So obviously, you've been an outdoorsman and a hiker for a long time. How did you and Dubetube kind of come up with a list of stuff that you're going to take with you and uh, your food stocks along the way?
Well, part of my preparation gear wise, I could trace back to 2007 when I was recovering from my first knee surgery. I started looking for lighter weight gear, but this would have been my first multi-week trip, first time I'd backpacked for more than 5 days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So with gear, I'd felt by 2017, I was comfortable with my gear. I'd done enough overnights and enough warm-up hikes where I was comfortable with the gear. But the food, the resupply, that's where I just didn't have the confidence, I guess. Um, how I overcame it? Well, I'm fortunate enough to live in New York. It was only a 4.5 or 5 hour drive. I took my wife on a vacation to Vermont.
Hey, there you
And
go.
we drove from Bennington, Vermont, all the way up to um, to Stowe. Okay, we went all the way up
Mm-hmm.
to Stowe, and I just mapped out all the places I could resupply at, where I can send my resupply boxes. I looked at all the bailout points. At this point, I had looked over that long trail map so many times and had it memorized. But the idea of going up there and driving the area, I went home just saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for the resupply. I'm ready for if I have to get off the trail in a hurry where everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really good about it. Now that's not possible. I guess if you're doing like the CDT, it's probably impossible. And yeah, and that's a long prep trip to take, a prep trip to take if you're doing the PCT or the AT.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky in that way. And it helped me overcome that because that was one of my biggest concerns was getting off the trail, just going into an unfamiliar area. And I guess from years of being in Boy Scouts and leading trips like that, just knowledge of the bailout points if there's an emergency.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people mess up with anything they do, whether it's hiking, hunting, fishing, kayaking. Doing that pre-trip planning and thinking about all the variables that are involved. A lot of people get in trouble because they don't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Zach. And I did an episode recently about Don't be afraid, be informed, okay? And it was spoke mostly to black bears, people's fear of bears, but that can be applied to every aspect of backpacking, is being informed will help you overcome a lot of your fears. Taking the time to look over the map. Heck, we have so much information at our fingertips now. I mean, back in the 70s when I started doing this as a kid, it was the library, and you hope they had enough information there. Now anybody can sit there, not on your computer. You can sit at your phone and come up with the information and start planning.
Yep, there's
And
a
I
ton.
literally, yeah, I literally can, with the trip I'm taking this summer, I can zoom in and look at what's in the towns that I'm going to be hiking by.
What trip are you taking this summer?
I'm doing the Tahoe Rim Trail.
Oh, okay, you want to talk about that for a minute? I don't know
Oh,
where the
I can,
Tahoe Rim
yeah,
Trail is.
yeah. I actually first thought about doing the Tahoe Rim Trail in 2018, about 2 days after I finished a long trail,
Hmm.
and but my middle son, who lives out on the West Coast, yeah, I start planning my next trip that like a day or two after I finish the last one. But I talked to him about my middle son on the West Coast, and he told me back in December, he says, "Dad, this is when you're doing the Tahoe Rim Trail. We're doing it this year." So I'm doing it with my middle son and one of his Air Force friends. They're both out of the Air Force now, but we're going to hike it. The Tahoe Rim Trail is a 170-mile trail that goes around Lake Tahoe, the rim of Lake Tahoe.
Hmm.
Uh, I think only like once or twice you're actually close enough to Lake Tahoe to experience it.
Right.
You're up in the mountains, up on the ridge for most of this, but you get some beautiful views of the trail, and you also get to hike I think it's a 50-mile section of the PCT as well when you're going on the west side of the trail, and it's a loop trail. When you get on the west side, you're actually on the PCT for a while.
Man, that is so awesome. It's great that you've got family members that are willing to, you know, either join you, push you, or allow you to take these awesome adventures.
Yeah, my oldest son, I got to hike with him and not get arrested. Now I'm gonna hike with my middle son. He's a fitness nut and see if I can hike this whole thing and not end up, I don't hate this, with a heart attack or
Laying on the side
wounded,
of the PCT.
laying on the side of the PCT, right?
The other one little takeaway I want to do wrap this kind of up with. You took the time to write a book and put it out on Amazon. You said earlier, if you have an idea, just write it down. It's easier than ever to get your stories out there, and I hope people realize that. I mean, recording something on your phone and just making a podcast, super easy. Making YouTube videos, super easy. And now, I mean, the whole process of putting a book on Amazon, it's not super complicated, is it?
No, not at all. We were bound by, like, the big publishing companies forever, okay? And I know this because I have another book I'm working on that I had started and now I'm getting back to, and I gave up on it because I couldn't find a publisher. And I realized that these big publishing companies, they're only interested, and I had actually a literary agent tell me, no, there's specific genre they're looking for. Well, we may not all be interested in that. And what being able to publish on Amazon does is it allows us to share our stories, our experiences with people that actually have an interest in them. That we're not actually People aren't stuck to whatever the publishing companies feel is going to sell right now for the next few months or the next year. So it gives us an opportunity to get our stories out there and share them with people. And it's the same thing with podcasting and YouTube. It's no different. If we no longer are stuck to listening to whatever's on the radio or watch whatever's on TV. We can actually zero in on the things that we have an interest in.
Absolutely right. And now's a good time to go ahead and plug all your places to catch your stuff. So go ahead and talk about the name of the book, where they can find it again.
Okay, switching gears, you can go on to Amazon. You can also get it through the website, papabearhikes.com, but it's on Amazon. And it's available in softcover. It's available on Kindle for free or 99 cents as a download. Um, so you can find that there.
Are you doing any signed copies?
I have done some. I don't feel I'm not a business person, Zach. If it was up to me, I'd probably be giving these things away. I mean, really, my wife will tell you that I'm a lousy business person. Okay, but we have been, but there's a cost involved with shipping it. But
Sure.
we will make arrangements for that. I'm just letting everybody know that um, I feel like I got to apologize for this. Maybe I shouldn't, but we'd have to charge you for the shipping and handling.
Oh, shoot. And where can they find you on Instagram and Facebook?
All my social media links are through the website because there's different. And not everything's just Papa Bear Hikes. So the
Okay.
easiest way to find me on social media is just go to the website papabearhikes.com. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we just got our Patreon set up. I think it's been about a month now.
Oh, great. And you said you're going to be starting a YouTube channel soon?
I have Martin Outside has already been started, and I've been putting videos up of my hikes with my hiking friends. Um, we go, yeah, we go out and do our celebrations out there at the end. We toast the end of our hike or midway of our hike or whatever summit we happen to make it to.
Right.
And I've been adding some informational type videos lately too, like about first aid kits and cook kits. I've been putting that on there.
Great. And you've also got the podcast, Papa Bear
The
Hikes,
pop,
right?
Yep, the Papa Bear Hikes podcast, which you're going to be coming on soon. We're going to get to talk again, I think, in about a week.
Yeah, on my
Right?
birthday.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I was told
Yeah.
that's your birthday.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
So,
I get to talk to you on your birthday.
yeah.
And our episodes on the podcast are available on all platforms. Or you can just go to popbearhikes.com and there is an icon there where you can go and listen to all our episodes right through there.
Fantastic. Martin, thanks for coming on the show again. And I look forward to reading your next book whenever you get it finished.
Zach, thanks for having me on. Thanks for reading the book. I really appreciate it. And as always, it's a lot of fun talking to you. I really enjoy being on your show.
Hey, man, I appreciate it.